Hello, and welcome to the experiment Yeast. What do they eat? Some interesting facts before we get started about yeast. Oh, and I'm sorry, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Winslow, PhD. And before we get started, let's go over some facts about yeast, shall we? First off, yeast is a fungi and it needs to eat. Number 2, yeast produces CO2 when it reacts with water and other substances, as we will find out in our experiment. Number 3, yeast causes bubbles in bread. All of the holes you see in the bread is caused by yeast and the CO2 pockets. 4, water wakes up the yeast. And 5, yeast particles are very small, so make sure you keep that in mind. So our experiment right now, we have oil, salt, flour, sugar, a quality NAS cookie, and our control experiment. What we are going to do is combine yeast with water and mix them in each one of these bags. We will then wait for 1 hour, and afterwards we will see if any CO2 buildup has occurred, because the Ziploc bag should keep a tight seal on it, and if there's evidence of CO2, then the bags will rise and be filled with CO2, of course. So what we will do now is fill the bags with water and with yeast. So as you can see, we put all of the yeast and the water, and each bag contains a certain ingredient, unlike the control bag. So also for clarification, we use the same amount of cookie, salt, oil, flour, and sugar compared so that the yeast has the same amount of substance to eat upon. Each contains 8 grams of the substance. And we also use 120 milliliters of water to fit it in. And so all of the measurements are the same, so hopefully we can have good results. So now we wait for an hour.
Welcome to the science world. I'm Test Tube Tim. Today we are exploring the fundamental powers of Saccharomyces cerevisiae. First, let's begin with an empty bottle and place the yeast into the bottle. Second, take some warm water, previously heated, and place in the yeast. Lastly, place about 2 tablespoons of sugar into the solution. That looks good. Now, let's place this balloon over the top of the bottle cap and watch the amount of CO2 produced by the yeast. It should be enough to blow this balloon up.
Well, it's been an hour, and let's see how the experiment turned out. As you can see, the control group over here, just with the yeast and water, there was no gas mixture at all, so there's not much CO2 or hardly at all any in there. If you look at the salt, oil, and flour, those are relatively low as well. However, the sugar, as you can evidently see, is very inflated, which means that a lot of carbon dioxide was produced in there. And also the cookie was moderately inflated. As you can see, it eats mostly sugar. And from that conclusion, we found out that yeast does indeed eat sugar. Thanks for joining in.
Well, as you can see, it's been a few minutes and the balloon has done quite well. Maybe not quite as well as we wanted, but there's obviously a large amount of CO2 that has come into the balloon here. And that's it for Science World. Thanks for tuning in.